extension can be used for that. So as part of my, in preparing for my reflections, I interviewed several people that I work with in the building here at Goddard High School that have been here for a long time because I valued their perspective. So what was the district like 10 years ago? I talked to Kelly Hall, who's been here for, I think, 27 years. She's an English teacher. She's been in this building that long. And Ken Hansard, who has been here, I'm pretty sure, at least 20 years. And they said back then the district was a growing population. The district had more money to provide updated books. Increasing the number of buildings in the district meant that the division of teachers had to split in order to fill these jobs. And so this meant the loss of longtime colleagues, and that was kind of a struggle. And then we had kind of a rivalry over the dividing between Eisenhower and Goddard. Of course, that crosses over into football too. But a lot of it is kind of a tussle over resources. They took a lot of resources with them, and so the librarian and we get to share. And actually, she and I get along great, but there's been some history there over the last 10 years. So with the district split, it caused socioeconomic inequality. Inequity is what I put up here, but same thing. My kids still feel that. In fact, someone mentioned it today, that they felt like it still wasn't fair the way that it's going. Kids from affluent neighborhoods ended up on the Eisenhower side, and the Goddard side serves more of the families who struggle. Eisenhower does get more of the financial resources. They have brand new buildings, they have newer equipment, and that's okay. I don't have a problem with that. The work ethic and the student achievement used to be higher, according to Kelly. She said 10 to 20 years ago, kids could read novels independently and without complaint, and now many of them don't care to learn or to read as much. I also found out from them that our district is much more data-driven, and it's very social media oriented, which is true. We have a really great communications district director with that, Mr. Dane Boxa. He does a fantastic job. What is the district like today? Well, this is based on an interview. I spoke with our principal about this, and these are the things that he emphasized as the most important things that came to the forefront of his mind. He said that the Goddard School District works to provide our students with an education that focuses on post-secondary preparation. This is something I love about our school. We give them a lot of opportunities to experience the real world. We take them on lots and lots of field trips. We give them opportunities to partner with WATC and Newman and get hands-on experience so that when they leave here, they have connections. Students have the option of exploring 16 different career pathways. They can enroll in dual credit college courses, complete industry-related internships, or participate in technical programs that prepare them to enter the workforce at competitive wages. We have some kids who go and earn a certificate for aircraft mechanics at WATC. They leave high school and have a job that pays them higher wages than many of us teachers get, which is great. I'm happy for them, and I think it's fantastic. Goddard District number 265 has continued to improve the opportunities for students despite reduced funding and lack of support from many Kansas legislators, which is a whole nother ball of wax. But our district continues to look for ways to provide a world-class education and employ the most qualified staff. So let me kind of step aside from the rigorous administrative perspective of that and just say something I picked out from the Cultural and Linguistic Diversity and Exceptionality article was that it pointed out to me one thing that I need to do in the midst of preparing these children, and when I'm grading their things, is I'm going to need to work on their assessment strategies more and take that into account, that they can't be uniform because they are all so unique, which is made evident by those career paths that we make available to them. And every child is so individual, and including their cultural and linguistic experiences. So I have to take that into account when I assess. Also mentioned was the ethnocentrism, and I'm fighting hard in the library and in my psychology classes against that. I'm trying to create a platform in those places where I can model to my students and share with them that they're part of a greater global whole and that they are not inferior. In fact, just today, I gave them that admonition that they are part of this bigger picture and that they need to look out for each other globally. I was also not really sure what cultural pluralism was until I read that. And I feel like my classroom is a microcosm of that concept. As we bring these kids in who are so different, it's like a microcosm in the macrocosm of the school itself, in the city, in the state, in the nation, and in the world. It just gets bigger and bigger, it grows, and it's a good training ground within those small, intimate parameters where we do capture in kids' hearts and have those social contracts and pull out the differences between us and celebrate them. I get to direct their cognition toward that global approach. For example, this next week they're going to be posting articles in our Google Plus community about nature versus nurture. I'm having them do that. I'm having them look up nature versus nurture in a different language. I printed out about 50 languages that they can choose from. Then they have to take that language, go to the country of the origin of that language, and find an article about nature versus nurture in that country. So their research is going to be fun and intense, and we're going to learn so much, and I cannot wait. What will the district be like 5 years from now? Well, I hope that what I'm doing in my classroom will have an impact. Again, I talked to Mr. Bridwell about this, and he says he feels like the structure of public education will change. He didn't give me specifics about that, but he did say that it's striving to be influential in the future education opportunities that are offered for our students. And the focus on industry partnerships like instructional technology and student relationships are at the forefront of our educational initiatives for the foreseeable future. So I think in 5 years we're going to see more of the appreciation from our students for the fact that we provide those partnerships and industry opportunities for them while building those familial, loving, intimate relationships that validate them as people while they're at our school. So I think that's just going to develop based on what Mr. Bridwell said and what I'm experiencing so far and trying to help develop. Hopefully that will change our district in 5 years. In terms of special education, I talked to Mr. Justin Schwartz. He is our special education science teacher. He said 10 years ago was the beginning of that full-blown inclusion for kids with special needs. He said peer integration was still new, which was interesting to me because that just feels normal because I'm kind of new at this and I have never known it any other way. So he said they had not yet discovered ways to accommodate the students that are blended into the regular classroom. So I feel like we've come a really long way with that, with all the accommodations we have. And he said teachers were back then receiving new training to handle inclusion. Now it's just a regular part of the gig that we receive training about that. The services for special ed now are that there's a lot of instructional support available now more than ever. I talked to Era Massimini, who's a fantastic, super smart lady. She's our English and social sciences sped teacher, or one of them. She's been here for 8 years, and she said the most common ones are reading aloud, extended time, separate setting for testing, shortened assignments, and if the student receives less than 70% or 80%, they can retake a test the same day in some cases. She said there's an emphasis now more than ever on students meeting the grade level expectations. She said progress is expected to be the same in the special ed students as it is in the regular ed students. So this is something that she's kind of struggling with, that she's not completely on board with. So that was really interesting to hear that from her. She also said that from the parents there's more of a sense of entitlement than there used to be. They're becoming more and more aware of their rights to services, which is good. But she also said that there's an effort at the higher court level. She told me about a court case in Denver to access public funds for that sped student budget so that they can go to college, which in and of itself she was kind of expressing some hesitation about that, pushing them and spending a lot of money for them to have a more meaningful education when in fact they may not be able to grasp and manage that. So that was an interesting conversation. She said sped services have turned more litigious than ever, which I found fascinating. What will services for special ed be like 5 years from now? Well, again, I talked to Justin Schwartz about this one, and I was really fascinated to talk to him about this. He said that efficiency and technology availability will improve for kids with disabilities. That didn't really surprise me too much. He said there will be assistive technology, more one-on-one iPad and electronic textbooks. That's hopefully due to an increase in our budget capabilities. He said every student will have an IEP in the future, not just the SPED students. And that was the fact that kind of grabbed me by the horns. And I said, what do you mean? He said, everybody will have an individualized education plan, every student. So the special ed students won't stand out as much, and everybody will be on a track to fulfill who they were meant to be. And I thought that was really exciting. He told me that there's the content specialist, SDAC, which is in Hutchinson, is implementing strategies to make that happen. So that was really glad to be made aware of that. That was neat. So there are my references. Not quite finished. I wanted to also tell you, when I read about the culture in the classroom, I really loved this quote. The one that said, culture isn't just a list of holidays or shared recipes, religious traditions, or language. It's a lived experience unique to each individual. As educators, it is our job to stimulate the intellectual development of children, and in this era, it's simply not enough to operate on the axis of color blindness. I absolutely love that, and the reason I love that is because I love celebrating diversity in my classroom. I'm a Peace Corps girl. I was in the Peace Corps with my husband 30 years ago in Papua New Guinea, and so I have this. And I've been blessed to travel a lot too and see a lot of the world and different cultures. So to me, it's super exciting, and I love bringing out those differences in my students and helping them feel validated in that, in their different cultural heritages and languages. I love giving them a chance to be proud of who they are in my classroom. I love honoring the home languages that mentioned that in that article too, about the home languages, and I think it's refreshing, and honestly, I think it's an unexpected joy for my other students when I have spontaneous moments where I ask, my German student or my Hungarian student or my Vietnamese student or my Mexican student, they all speak fluent different languages, to speak the native tongue for their peers, just briefly, not enough to embarrass them, but just enough to draw attention to how smart they are and how cool it is to be bilingual or trilingual and, live in other places besides Goddard, Kansas. So, I just love that our district does capturing kids' hearts. It's really made me more aware of the purpose of being a teacher and helping with all of these district goals and where we're going in the future and where we've been in the past. It helps me to build that learning community that's loving and that's very tolerant. So what I would like to do is end my presentation with the launch that I gave my students this morning. I can get this to minimize, and I'll maximize this one. The concept of Ubuntu. I shared this with my students with a full heart, and I will read it to you now as I encourage you and we end our presentation tonight. In certain regions of South Africa, when someone does something wrong, he is taken to the center of the village and surrounded by his tribe for 2 days while they speak of all the good he has done. They believe each person is good, yet sometimes we make mistakes, which is really a cry for help. They unite in this ritual to encourage the person to reconnect with his true nature. The belief is that unity and affirmation have more power to change behavior than shame and punishment. This is known as Ubuntu, humanity towards others. So when I shared this with my students, I said, let's make Ubuntu a verb. I said, this weekend when you go home, Ubuntu someone. Give someone grace who's discouraged. Give someone grace who screwed something up. Give someone that Ubuntu moment and see if you can just go out and change the world. Because I said, well, why can't people do this? I said, we can. I said, it can start with you 22 people. Go out and multiply that concept. So that's the thought I want to leave you with, and I'm grateful for this opportunity to share that with you and everything I've gotten to research and learn, and I'm more excited than ever this year to be able to teach and share global affirmation. Thanks for listening.